Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about the top 5 reasons not to move to Texas.
Now, if you are somebody that is looking to move to Texas or is in the process of doing so, you may want to stick around because you will have to see what is in store for you when you move here.
Check it out, guys. So we're going to start out with probably the most obvious for anybody moving this area that pretty much anywhere else in the country is going to be Texas weather. And this is kind of an adjustment for you moving into the area.
Yeah, it was a lot to get used to.
Yeah, I have quite a few buddies that have moved from all over the country. I'm a big golfer, so I know during the summers when we go out to golf, I've had a couple buddies from the Northwest, and they just struggle. When it's 110 degrees, feels like 115, 116, and you're out, in the heat. It can be, a little bit of an adjustment for people.
I think a big problem with Texas as well is the fact that we really don't get seasons here. It's kind of just all over the place for a lot of the time. I moved here in the late March. First year I moved here, it was already like 80 degrees. I turned up to play a game of football.
Yeah.
I immediately couldn't breathe after 5 minutes of running because I just wasn't. I didn't know what to do, and then it kind of gets stormy, and it gets hot again, and it cools down, and it gets hot again. And then
we have like 2 weeks of spring and 2 weeks of fall, and then it's just kind of
somewhere in the middle, and then it cycles, and it's all over the place. I mean, we talked about in a previous video that the weather is good here, and for a lot of the time it is.
It is, yeah.
But I think the unpredictability of Texas weather can be a real turn-off for a lot of people. I think I've spoken to people who moved away from Texas, and like one of the reasons is we could just there's no seasons, we just can't get used to. There's no consistency with it. It's hard to really adjust your lifestyle to it when it's so predictable.
Yeah.
So the next thing up here is the driving. As someone who came here, obviously the last few years, it took a lot to get used to, and for anyone else that is wanting to move here, you're gonna have to do the same.
It can be a little hectic. I mean, it's some aggressive driving.
I thought when I moved here that the biggest thing was going to be having to drive on the other side of the road was going to be the biggest issue. No, it's having to deal with everyone else around you. If you, for example, are wanting to drive the speed limit, the right lane is for you.
Do not go in the left lane.
No.
Do not go in the left lane.
Literally, if say that for example the speed limit is 70 miles an hour, you want to be doing
75, 80.
90?
Yeah.
As Shelby said, the left lane is for people with ticket money. You shouldn't be driving the left lane if you don't want to be going a good chunk over the speed limit, and that is weirdly accepted. It's accepted here, and for whatever reason that's just the case. A lot of people move here from California, from New York, maybe who aren't used to free driving that quickly. A lot of traffic they're used to. Here, they sit in the left lane and can cause issues. I think that has been a
drives me insane. When I have
big
someone
influx.
driving at or under the speed limit in the left lane,
There was a video I saw the other week of a cop pulling a guy over, and he was like, "Do you know why I pulled you over?"
No, I pulled you over. I don't know. Did you already forget?
He's like, "No," and he was like, "I was doing the speed limit." And he was like, "Yes, you're in the left lane, and people were passing you." And he was like, "Oh, what?" I was like, "You need to be going faster than the speed limit." And the guy was shocked because he'd been pulled over for doing the speed limit, which sounds crazy, but in Texas you need to be either going quicker or
left lane's for passing only.
Passing only, yeah. So
no, that is a kind of an adjustment. I think part of that too, the big adjustment for a lot of people, with just how big Texas is, and I think people underestimate that. I was talking to a friend the other day, and he was thinking about relocating from, I think it was Minnesota, and he was like, "Oh yeah, my company might be moving down to Waco." And he's like, "How close is that?" I'm like, "It's like a 2-hour drive." And for him, that was just kind of a wild thing within the state, but also still, that's a day trip. I was like, we drive down to Austin for a weekend, and that's a 4-hour drive.
3.5 hours, 4 hours.
Yeah.
It's just it's normal for people here. I came here, and a 2-hour drive in England to me would be just the worst idea possible, and then now Austin is just like, oh, it's another drive. Or we drove down to Houston to fly to England, and it was a 4-hour drive.
Yeah.
There's public transportation. Yeah. If you're someone that relies on it somewhere else, if you're not a keen driver, if you don't want to be tackling the roads with a lot of people,
it can be tough.
It can be.
Because we're so spread out. Like we kind of talked about too. Like here in the Dallas Fort Worth area, we have it's called the DART, which is our public transportation's railway system. But even that, I went to a Stars game a few weeks ago, and it was just a pain, because by the time we had to drive down to the station, we parked there, we got onto the train, and then it was a 40-minute train ride down to Dallas and it would have been a 20-minute drive. So it's like just kind of it's almost more hassle than it's worth because we're so spread out here in Texas. It makes train and public transportation just a lot more difficult.
Yeah, we can show a map of it, but to basically put it in perspective, the DART will go from Dallas, has different lines throughout the Metroplex, but doesn't really hit the entire Metroplex, kind of hits half of it maybe.
Yeah, so you're probably 20
You can go
minutes
from
between
Dallas to Irving, you can go
stations.
to Carrollton, Plano, and a couple of other little areas, but we're in Flowerman, for example, so we would have to drive, like it says,
30 minutes.
30 minutes to Irving, and then get onto the DART, and then go elsewhere. So it's not like for me in England, you can get a train pretty much anywhere. There's smaller railways and there's the longer railways. There's buses that go everywhere. I think Dallas has some buses.
They do, but
But again, that's
different bus stop.
Dallas.
Yeah.
So you have to rely on driving a lot, which can be tough, especially if you want to go out on the weekend and have a couple of drinks. You have to either drive, which is not advisable, or pay a lot of money for an Uber. So again, can be a bit of an issue for someone that likes to go out and you're not planning on living in downtown Dallas.
The hidden expense there too, and this is one I don't think much about anymore at this point because having lived here for a while, but having talked with clients who've moved to the area is tolls. And most every major thoroughfare in the DFW Metroplex, 635 Express, so 35 Express, 121 entirely tollway, Dallas North Tollway.
And George Bush.
Yeah, George Bush. Yes, I mean, you have all these major roads around the Metroplex that you're going to be paying tolls. Now, these aren't like New York City bridge tolls where you're paying $10 to go to drive on them. But I mean, 121, depending on how long you're on that road, each toll, say it's going to be probably a buck 20 or whatever if you have a toll
Some of them
tag.
can be rough though. I mean, you've got if we go to McKinney, for example, that can be $7, $9 going up there. Fort Worth going down.
183 is a bear.
That can be really bad because the traffic down there is so bad it almost forces people to get on, and the worse the traffic is, the more expensive it's going to be. So if you're someone that has to travel for work, for example, if you're working in Fort Worth but you want to live by the airport, you're going to be paying a lot of money in tolls, or you're going to be sitting in traffic for a long time. So when you're moving here, you do have to think about where am I working, where am I going to live, and that helps speaking to someone or people that work in the area and know the area really well to say, if you want to be traveling to work, don't be living in these areas because you're going to be spending a lot of money.
You don't want to be spending $10, $20 every day driving to and from work.
Or if you're going to be avoiding the tolls, you're going to be going a route that could be 20, 30 minutes longer, which is I've done sometimes, and sometimes it's just not worth the hassle. So it's there's a lot to think about there.
So number 3. So this one is going to be kind of, I guess, Texas reputation may precede it. So guns.
I think there's a big preconception for Texas with just everyone's got a gun, everyone carries guns. It's just a gun crazy state.
The Wild West.
Yeah, and it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. I moved here again with that idea and was, I guess, pleasantly surprised it wasn't as crazy. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of people that carry guns. I mean, I've driven Kurt's truck shockingly one time and looked down to see his gun was holstered in his car, which was weird for me. So a lot of people do carry them, but I don't think it's as bad as...
It's not as prevalent as people would think.
No,
but again, if that's something that if you are a person who is, averse to guns, you may go to the grocery store and see somebody with a gun on their hip. Like that's not, I don't want to say it's super common, but be prepared.
Yeah, and it's going to depend on where you live as well. I mean, not to sort of point towards any areas in particular, but I guess the more rural you're going to be, you're more likely.
If you go to West Texas, you're going to see people with that on there.
Yeah.
That is very common.
Yeah.
So number 4, we try to avoid these kind of conversations just because, but politics. It's all over the news. I think most people kind of know if you're moving to the area, if you've thought about moving to the area, you kind of know where Texas falls. But again, it is something I kind of just like to warn people most people know the big issues and where Texas stands on them. But again, I like to just tell people this is probably something you're getting maybe different than the culture you're used to from different other areas of the country. So.
Yeah, I think as someone who came here, I wasn't super political back in the UK. Again, still not super political now. I mean, I try and keep myself aware of what's going on. I think the biggest tip I could give to someone moving here is that you are welcome to have your political opinion, but I would not try and force it on those that live here or are from here. People will appreciate an open dialogue sort of thing, but they're not going to want people to force their opinion. Yeah. You can have a conversation with someone about politics, but don't try and bring your ideologies to Texas and think that the people are going to be okay with it. That's kind of the best way I can describe that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And last but not least, and this has been a fun one to get used to over the last few years, is the Texas wildlife. Might sound silly, but you are going to come across some things you may have not seen before. Myself have definitely experienced that over the last few years. We are talking snakes, spiders, rats. What else we got going on? Coyotes. There's a lot running around, and depending on where you live, you're probably going to see quite a bit of it. I actually had a good experience, well, a couple of experiences recently. The other night, getting out of the shower, I had a brown recluse just skate past my feet, and I didn't know what to do. I grabbed the wife.
Yeah.
She sorted it out for me. We also had a rat snake come into the garage just the other week, about this big. Wasn't expecting that. I was just taking out the trash, and it just said hello, and that was it. And I think that, and you'll know more than I will.
And again, that also depends on, of course, where you're looking. And kind of the way I describe it to people is the further out of the Metroplex you get, the more rural that you go, the more common, you're impeding on their habitat. So, seeing things like, copperheads. Really don't get a whole lot of rattlesnakes here in North Texas. It's more West Texas, South Texas. But water moccasins, if you're near any bodies of water, something to keep an eye out on. But yeah, bugs too. I had a cousin. My cousin actually moved down from up north in Michigan, and she jokingly said, she goes, I used to think that bugs in somebody's house was a sign that they were dirty. And she's like, until I moved down to Texas, she goes, there's nothing I can do. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of just
we just have
par for the course.
There's little pockets of spiders that we just leave because they are getting the rest of the bugs for you. So it's just like, back home I would be like, oh no, spider, get it out. And now
it's like, oh, that's a buddy.
You're doing your job, and I appreciate what you're doing for me. And I think mosquitoes is another one. They can be pretty bad. Especially I get welts this big. My body does not enjoy those, and I think you've got to get used to cicadas as well. I'm sure there's other places that have them.
It's supposed to be a big year for those this year.
I think we're getting the combined sort of forces of both cicadas. That's something you get used to. I think kind of during those summer months, it's just white noise.
At night walking outside.
I walked out and I was like, is this like some sort of world-ending apocalyptic soundtrack? And it was just cicadas, and you get used to it. So get used to that.
Alright guys, thanks for sticking to the end. If you guys like the content, make sure to like and subscribe. And again, we will see you guys in the next one.
See ya.